What makes for a bad day in real estate? I'm Realtor Rich.
I'm Michelle Haas.
And we're the Realtors Toolbox, everybody. Super excited to be here with you. Today, we're going to talk about some things that might ruffle your feathers a little bit in your quest to become successful in real estate or to sustain your success in real estate. And I'd like to dive right in by talking about a shifting real estate market. Market changes certainly can catch you off guard. And especially if you've never been through a market that's shifted from maybe being super busy to being slower, it can take you off your game a bit. Interest rate changes. I mean, it kind of falls under some other things as well, but slow periods in the market. These things all certainly can make for a bad day if you haven't prepared for it. I mean, what are your thoughts on market changes, Michelle?
Well, when it comes to market change, you really need to be prepared for it financially. If you're not financially ready for a couple of months of really slow times, or maybe a few months of really slow times, it could be really hard for you. But also prepare for it emotionally. Sometimes things happen. You had a couple of buyers and now they're not buying. You had some things lined up in your mind that you thought were happening, and then the market changed. So sellers backed off, buyers backed off, things are not happening. The buyers and sellers used to fall in your lap, not a whole lot of effort there. And then suddenly they're not. You're starting to make all these phone calls and you're not getting a whole lot of response. And you're putting out mailers, you're doing all the things you're supposed to do, and it's still slow. And it can kind of hurt your ego a little bit. Have you been through that, Rich, where you're just like,
oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been through
business.
Yep. And I've been through a few down markets now. I've been around a little while, and you definitely have to account for it. Probably another good thing to keep in mind is put a little aside for a rainy day, right? The market slows. You want to be prepared for it. You can certainly increase your activities and work through it. But if you've never been through it, you want to plan for it, because the market does go up, and it does have periods of time where it slows and may even adjust down a little bit. So you want to be prepared. Definitely. Those things can get at you if you're not ready. And you don't want to be taken off your game, especially if you've done well and have closed deals and made money and you can. So yeah, that's just a part of being prepared. Just like you might be prepared for setting aside money to pay your income taxes, so you want to account for some of those things. But yeah, a shifting market is certainly something to consider, and it can make for it can make for a bad day in real estate if all of a sudden you're realizing, yep, things have shifted and I'm being affected by it. So
yeah, definitely. Another thing that kind of hurts your ego is when family or friends, they use another real estate agent. If you've been here longer than 5 minutes, you're going to know that happens to everyone. You're not the only family member they know who is in real estate. There are others, there are other friends, there are other recommendations, but it does hurt your ego a little bit when somebody uses somebody else and you're like, hey, what about me? I want a paycheck too. I want to help you too. I want to do something. And then it doesn't work.
Right.
So I'm putting that in my ego kind of bucket, and it's difficult to deal with, and having that endurance to get through it and continue on is not easy.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because it reminds me of the importance of letting everyone in your friend and family list, your sphere of influence, know that you are an actively practicing real estate agent. And so there's this little saying, no secret agents, right? People, you have to let them know, because sometimes you maybe didn't let them know, and had they known, they would have chosen you. So certainly something to keep in mind. It's important to build a list of your closest friends and family, and make sure they all know that you're in real estate and actively practicing full time. And so, or even if you're part-time, you actively let them know that you're practicing real estate. So yeah,
your social media should know.
Yes.
You should be talking about real estate on some kind of level on a consistent basis. It needs to happen for you to be successful.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Another thing that makes for a bad day in real estate is financing problems.
Yes.
Have you dealt with financing problems, Rich?
Financing problems, they absolutely can occur. And you want to be prepared for this. And sometimes it can be client related, and sometimes it can be the loan officer that you're working with related. Maybe they're not proficient in practicing, home financing, and they leave a few of the details out, and it can make for a bad day if you've been out showing property and you find out that, oh, they can't qualify for this loan, or there was something that went unaccounted for because the loan officer didn't know, and you find out in underwriting after you've put tons of effort into showing properties, could be for weeks or months, and now you're in contract and you find out they can't buy a house. That can make for a bad day. Another thing that can rough up your day is you're in contract and the house that you've made the offer on, the appraisal comes back below the offering amount that has been accepted, right? So the appraisal value is low. What about that, Michelle?
Oh man, that is a rough one, because going toe to toe with an appraiser is not easy. If that appraisal comes in low, let's just call it $20,000. Everybody's feathers they're going to be ruffled. I mean, everybody's going to be upset. The seller, of course, wants that money. Well, maybe the buyer is okay with it, right? Because maybe they're going to pay $20,000 less. But as a listing agent, if you're going toe to toe with an appraiser, that's a bad day from sun up to sundown. I mean, we're going to do another video on how to do that effectively, but it's very difficult. It can be done, but it's very difficult. And oh man, that number will bring a little tear.
Yes.
It's rough.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought that up, Michelle. I mean, you want to look for that video on how to deal with appraisals that come in low. And there are things that you can do, and it is an uphill battle to get there. It can be done if the appraiser has been a little bit lazy in their work. And but it can't just be because, as the realtor, you convinced everybody, including yourself, the house was worth more, when in reality you hadn't really done all your homework and it's really not worth more. That's going to make it really tough for you to get a reconsideration of value on that appraisal, because those appraisers, they're all licensed and they're monitored, and their track record is it's
important.
Yeah, it's really important, and it makes it difficult. So appraisers don't like to reconsider the values and make changes, because it kind of leaves a little bit of a black mark on their record. And if they get too many of those, they can kind of make it on the appraiser's naughty list. So
right.
Put it lightly. But
yeah, you're right. It's their job. So nobody wants to be told, hey, you did your job wrong. That's tough.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's right. Absolutely. So we'll do a separate video on that one.
Yeah. Well, there are other types of issues that come up. One, from title. If there's some kind of cloud on title, that can adjust some numbers for the seller.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unexpected legal issues that come up. Title issues can hopefully be discovered early on. We've also seen liens show up. We've seen sellers have liens that pop up at the end when they're getting ready to record. All of a sudden, there's a $50,000 lien. We've seen $150,000 liens pop up and against the seller. And if the seller doesn't have enough, money to reconcile it all, then that makes for a pretty bad day in real estate, because that could very well mean that your deal is not going to close, and the money changes, everything changes when stuff like that happens. And then another big one is personal circumstances just come up, and it could be on the part of the seller or the buyer. But what about personal circumstances, Michelle? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a whole array of personal circumstances, right? I mean, there could be a lot of different things, but I had a buyer I was running around with, and it was already kind of a difficult situation because he couldn't afford too much, and we were looking for the right place. And he personally decided to buy a new truck that was, what was it, $740 a month for the truck. And that personally was a bad decision. And
Yeah,
after the lender told him not to do that, he asked me about it. I told him not to do that, and he did it anyway. And sometimes
that's right.
it's happened before with others. Like somebody makes a big purchase and
Oh yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about the truck. I had a client once that she made a lot of money, fully pre-qualified, great income, everything was good, had gone out, written offers, got into contract, and next thing we know, she had bought a brand new Jaguar and took on what was just shy of a $900 a month car payment. And once it's done, it's done. There was no way to undo it. And the debt shows up because the inquiry shows up. And in the end, when they check to see if any new debt has come up before they fund the loan, it appeared and it killed her deal. It threw her ratios out of line in the way that she was not going to be able to obtain the financing. And so she got the car she wanted and she lost the house she wanted. So yeah, those kinds of things can pop up and make a huge difference. And then under personal circumstances, you got other things like job changes that could occur or job loss. We've seen people get laid off from their jobs in the middle of escrow and there's nothing you can do about it.
It happens with our military friends that have to go, like it or not. You have orders, you got to go.
Yep. And so those things can cause changes. Sellers and buyers, we've seen other life events like deaths in the family of parties to the transaction. That'll kill a deal.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Divorces divorces can kill a deal or kill the other spouse. Or no, I'm just kidding. But
maybe not that much.
Yeah,
I do have an agent friend who was selling a home, and he was an elderly man who was selling it, and he passed away in the middle of escrow. Unfortunately, I mean, they were in contract. We're like halfway through, and she was calling him and he wasn't answering. And she went over there and she was the one who found him. She was very upset about it. Really shook her pretty bad. And and no will, no trust. And I think as agents, we don't have the conversations about wills and trusts that we should be having. And I know it's kind of out of our job description, but it just needs to happen a lot more. And this particular person didn't have a trust in place, and probate takes over and sucks out a lot of money. And but anyways, I mean, things happen. That's a bad day. Can you imagine? You're an agent and you go to check on your client and he's in the bedroom and he's passed away, and now you're calling the police. That's what you do, right? I think you call 911 and just tell them, start there. And
that's horrible.
And it's sometimes it's not even about me as an agent losing a deal, but like in the case of my buyer that I was talking about earlier, I also hope for him to find a place. I kind of think about this a lot. I plan it in my mind a lot. I'm searching for him and what will be a good place. And then after months of running around and trying and hoping, like, hey, I bought a new truck. Well, yeah, it's a bad day in real estate for me, but it's kind of my hope for him that's lost. And that's kind of a bummer. You're like, oh man, you're kind of stuck in that apartment now. I'm sorry about that. I wish I can do something for you, but what am I going to do? I wish I could. So, I mean, it is a bad day for us as agents, but it's sad to see a worse day for them, for anybody who's trying and trying to make something.
And it's interesting you make the comment about, having trusts and wills in place. The estate planning step is real important when it comes to large assets like real estate. In fact, we have a colleague, Michelle, you and I have a colleague right now that has a listing where the lady was in an over 55 community, didn't have a trust set up. They recommended that she do that. And so they got the trust all set up and signed and recorded. And the next day, the lady who had some pretty severe health issues, unexpectedly though, passed away. And luckily they were able to get that all in place the day before, because they were selling the house anyway, but it made it easier on the family. So that, estate planning steps are super important for people, even though, like you said, it's out of our scope of the work.
Yeah.
But we can certainly advise and recommend that people look into those things to make things easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, to have a trust in place is so, so important. And if you have a rental in your personal name, it's even harder. I mean, you really got to put some things in place to protect yourself. And if you're, oh yeah, we got to do another video just on wills and trusts. I mean, to have that.
That's really important. We definitely need to do that. And we might be able to pull an estate planning attorney or a paralegal into that and have them give us, some advice on that. And then I'd kind of like to jump to buyers and sellers that just change their minds about selling or buying. And really, they've just had a change of heart, and there's no valid justification for it. They just don't want to do it anymore. And so that can be kind of rough. And then, sometimes people are, maybe having a little bit of buyer's remorse as they're going through the escrow process, not sure they're making the right decision, or they've never owned before. Now they're taking on a house payment and they start to get cold feet. And some of these things kind of come into play. And so, I mean, of course, you're going to do everything you can to mitigate the damage, try to help them see their way through to the goal that they have expressed to you that's important to them, which is home ownership. But sometimes we have to help people overcome their own concerns that are in their best interest to help them get there. And so buyer's remorse is a big deal. People become fearful and get cold feet. I mean, what are your thoughts on that one, Michelle?
It is a big deal to buy a house. I mean, and for some people in our market, they're spending $500,000 and up, $500,000 that you're about to tie yourself to. That's and take care of a house and be responsible for a lot of different aspects of upkeep. All of those things. It is a big deal. It's the American dream, but it's hard. It's really difficult. And it's understandable that any person making a big purchase would have some nervousness about it. But as an agent, I try to be encouraging and saying, and, encourage them along the way and kind of reassure them. I'm not in a different bucket than any of my buyers or any of my sellers. I have bought, I have sold, and I understand all the emotions behind it. I've experienced it. I've been an agent and experienced it. And even with knowing what I know, it's not easy. Emotionally, it's not easy. And, but yeah, I've had one buyer in particular, contingencies were closed. We have 5 days to go. And he decided very casually, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm out. Thank you for all you've done. Told the lender, thank you for all you've done. I don't want to do this anymore. And only by the threat of lawsuit from the seller did he continue.
Wow.
It was, that was a rough day in real estate when I'm trying to tell him, yeah, you could be sued.
So was he having remorse, Michelle? Was he having remorse about buying and taking on a payment, or what was it that was causing him to back out and change his mind?
Well, what he said out loud was the payments are too high. He was purchasing well under what he qualified for. And honestly, I think it was some kind of buyer's remorse. It was kind of some nervousness. I mean,
so a great example of someone that had a goal for home ownership and then got cold feet, and then they were trying to kind of back out a little bit out of fear of now they're tied to that mortgage payment.
Yeah.
And then the seller made some threats because they were making plans to do things, and I guess the buyer was probably going to lose their earnest money deposit.
And that was established. Yeah. He closed contingencies, and he said, I'd rather lose the earnest money deposit than be stuck with the house.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, wow. You get a house. What do you mean?
Yeah. And
So conversations.
what was the outcome of that whole ordeal?
He ended up buying it because he was afraid of what the lawsuit would mean. So
Oh,
he bought it.
okay. And then
Yeah.
was he happy after he bought it?
He has not complained.
Yeah.
So
So he is a homeowner, and the property values in our current market have been increasing. So
absolutely.
it's I'm sure his immediate experience so far has probably been pretty good. How long ago was that? Was that within the last year or so, or
So this is November, a little more than a year ago now.
okay.
Yeah, it's around a year now, a little more than a year now. And he's had the freedom to really make some changes in that home as he wanted to.
Oh,
And
that's
that
awesome.
part has been really good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
getting over that hill sometimes is very difficult. And I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So especially the less often you buy and sell, the harder this is.
That's right.
If you're one of these people, you buy every few years, you have a rental, you sell a rental, you do this, you do that, you're making changes often, you get used to it, and it's easier. Not easy, but easier.
Yeah.
But for those who only buy 3 or 4 times in their entire lifetime, it's
That's
hard.
right.
It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not your full-time job, so you don't memorize and know
Yeah.
everything that goes on, and things change and the process has changed, and
Yeah.
different. Yeah, it becomes a different experience every time, and you need the help of a good professional
Yeah.
realtor to assist you in that. And another thing that can make for a rough day in real estate is when sellers maybe don't disclose everything about a property that they're supposed to disclose. In fact,
Right.
we had a client, this has been a few years ago, but they found a beautiful home, 4,000 square foot home that was very dated. It was going to need some work. But they were super excited to get it. It was going to be a good deal. 4,000 square foot home, beautiful big lot with a built-in swimming pool, really really nice property with big oak trees and lots of shade. And it was amazing. And in the disclosures, the seller disclosed that there was some water seepage that was happening into the house. And this person purchased late in the fall, right before the rainy season. And then after taking possession of the property and being there for a couple of months, in the 3rd month, there was some pretty heavy rainfall. And this particular house had a very unique feature. It had a 6-foot tall fireplace that was about 5 feet wide. You could almost stand up in it, depending on your height.
Wow.
And then it was an exposed aggregate conversation pit with stairs that went down. And it was kind of an uncomfortable conversation pit. When I think of a conversation pit, I think of like plush couches and other things, but this was just different. It was kind of old school, but it was all exposed aggregate concrete fire pit area inside the house. And they got this pretty heavy rain, and it put over 600 gallons of water into the conversation pit, which made it kind of like an indoor hot tub area without the heater. And yeah, so
Oh.
yeah, it really was an understatement to say seepage, right?
Seepage.
This was full on flooding. They had to get a carpet cleaning company to come out to suck all the water out and pump it into the street. And it was a pretty big deal. And then everybody ended up in arbitration over the kind of thing that the homeowner knew about, and they had been there for many years. So they knew there was an issue, and it was more than just seepage. But yep, we ended up learning about what we have to do when you go to arbitration, because that one ended up in arbitration. And in the end, the seller ended up paying a pretty sizable chunk of money to remediate the problem and make the buyer whole on their purchase. And that was kind of how that went. But it makes a rough day in real estate when you have to go to mediations and arbitrations. And sometimes it's just out of your control, and you're going to end up there because everybody can't come to terms. And that is what had to happen in that situation. So yeah, fun stuff. I'm sure you've got stories like that too, Michelle. that pop up.
That's a rough one right there. I mean, they had a little indoor hot tub there, huh?
And they really did. Yeah. So just no heater and no bubbles, right? But it was just a big area that was filled with water. Pretty unfortunate. But it occurred and stuff happens. And that's kind of why we wanted to cover the topic of what a bad day in real estate can look like. And there's all kinds of different things that come up. And we are certainly problem solvers as realtors, and we will collaborate with our colleagues, our brokers, our managing brokers, and get the support and help we need. And the idea is to make everyone whole in the transaction and make everyone happy in one way or another. We've got to figure out how to problem solve all those things, and it can be done, and you'll get good at it. So if you're new thinking, oh my gosh, I wouldn't know what to do in that situation, you're going to have lots of people that have experience that are around you and resources that you'll know where to go to get the help that you need. And you'll be able to work your way through those problems and solve them where, everyone is satisfied in the end. And so I don't know if you got any other examples or stories, Michelle, that you want to share, but I know we could go on and on this one.
I mean, there's so many different variables, but I think you're right. I think that whatever comes up, whatever happens, everyone out there has a unique story to tell about damage that was found later, title issues, financing issues, all kinds of things pop up. I think one of the worst stories that I hear about is a seller sells a house and they leave a dog behind.
Oh,
okay. Now you're getting under my skin. Really. I mean, a seller sells a house and they leave cats behind.
Right.
If you have a pond in the back and you left a turtle, why don't you say so? Because that to me is a bad day in real estate. And you can help somebody rehome a dog, or maybe you have to maybe the new buyer, the new owner now has a cat, but that's not always the case, and things happen, and those are the stories that are bad days for me. I mean, that is just, hey, you're a seller, you don't leave your dog behind. Or maybe it's okay that you left your dog behind, because if you were willing to leave your dog behind, then you should leave that dog behind. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, probably. That's right.
So I don't know. I think of those kind of stories that. Yeah. That's rotten to me. That's seriously rotten. But.
Yeah. And so stuff's going to come up. Our point with doing a conversation about what a bad day looks like. Things are going to happen, and there is a solution, and everything will be resolved one way or another in the end. And we have the power to make things right and to work with people and help people. And that's our specialty. That's why we are realtors. So with that, I think we'll wrap this one up. We are the Realtors Toolbox. If you like this video, leave us a comment, subscribe. We'd love to have you as a part of our audience. And we've got a lot of other great content. So keep looking for us, and we will see you on the next video. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Have a great day. More to come.